Hello everyone, welcome to episode 13 of whatever this is of me sharing my knitting. I am back. I took a really long break and I hope that some of you missed me. I know some of you did because you let me know. I just needed a break. I was not able to prioritize sharing my knitting, so I focused instead on just using my free time to knit. And now I'm back and I have a lot to show you. So let's just get into it. I have 4 finished objects. 3 of them are sweaters. One of them is not here with me, so I will talk about that one later. But you will be proud of me because I finished 2 sweaters that were on my needles for a very long time, like almost a year. So that first one is Granito by Locatelli, and I'm going to go through all of the project specs again because it's been so long since you last watched me talk about my knitting. Probably, I mean, who knows? I don't even remember what I said last about them. So this is a top-down sweater. It's a pretty basic pullover, dropped shoulders, and it's got short row shaping for the neck. You start at the shoulders, you knit flat for a while, you knit separate pieces, and then you join the shoulder pieces together and knit the body from there. You pick up for the sleeves, you just do simple decreases for the sleeves, and then once you get to a certain part in the body, you add the pockets. And it's also got these 4 slip stitch lines, 2 down the front and 2 down the back. So hopefully you can see that there. I know the screen or the camera gets a little bit blown out because this is a black yarn. I knit this from a thrifted sweater that I deconstructed. The yarn is a wool, alpaca, and acrylic blend, and it's closer to a light fingering or a lace weight than it is a fingering, which is what the pattern calls for. So what I did was just use the suggested needle, or I might have gone down a needle or 2, knit a gauge swatch, got the gauge that I preferred with this yarn, and then just did some basic arithmetic to figure out what size I needed to knit, and that was the size large, whereas I usually would have knit probably a size small. So this is a lot of stitches. It's essentially a lace weight sweater. And that's partly the reason it took me so long. The other reason is that the yarn was just not very enjoyable to work with. It stuck to my needles, which made magic loop for the sleeves just like difficult and not very fun. So that's part of the reason it took me so long to knit. And the other reason is just like, I mean, it's stockinette, and so it just kind of took a lot out of me, really. So I just had to like knit on it for a long stretch and then put it down, and then pull it back out and knit on it again. So in that sense, I was pretty monogamous on it, but I would leave it kind of in the corner for a really long time and then pull it back out again. Overall, the pattern was very well written. It was really easy to understand. I was going to say it was fun to knit, and that's true. I think part of the reason why I struggled, again, was just the yarn. It just wasn't very enjoyable to knit with. But the design itself is really interesting. It's simple, yet, it's got some really interesting elements to it, including, I didn't show this off, but the shoulder seam is exposed, so that just adds another interesting element. And yeah, overall, I'm happy with this. I do want to point out one thing, though. I thought that this was going to be my wardrobe staple, and it was just going to be a basic sweater that I threw on all the time. I have not worn this out yet. It is blocked, the ends aren't woven in, so that's part of the reason. The other reason though is that the pockets add quite a bit of bulk to my hips. So I am a short hourglass body shape, and because of that, I usually prefer sweaters that hit kind of at my waist, my smallest part, instead of at my hips, which is my widest part. But I'm not opposed to wearing sweaters that hit me at my hips. That's just kind of my general like rule of thumb. This sweater hits me at my hips, which again is fine, but with the pockets, it really adds a lot of bulk to my hips that I don't really like. And they also, the pockets don't really sit like I hoped that they would. Now, part of this is my fault because you can tell that the pockets don't sit flat in the pattern photos. She doesn't try to hide that fact. And it doesn't necessarily look bad. But I think the issue is that on me, it feels like it adds so much bulk to my hips that it just seems a little bit unflattering. Which, you know, I don't, like, not every sweater that I knit or every clothing item that I wear needs to like perfectly flatter my body. I don't think I need everything to like flatter me in order to feel confident in what I'm wearing. But when I put it on, I was a little bit disappointed. And one pocket seems to be having more issues than the other one. The first one that I knit and sewed down, because you knit the lining and then you sew the lining into the sweater. The first one I did was great. I think it looks fine. The second one is having issues. The second one doesn't want to lay flat. It like kind of puckers. I'm not sure if you can really tell that, but it kind of puckers and it just doesn't really look right. I don't know. It's not bad, but it's not great either. You can kind of tell. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should have knit a smaller size. It fits me perfectly in the top, and it fits me great in the sleeves. It's just like the bottom kind of, it's a straight sweater, but it almost like kind of comes out a little bit. Let me actually try this on. I think I think that I can show you what I'm talking about quite a bit better. Okay, so here we are. It looks great in the top. It looks great in the sleeves. I think this style suits me really well. It looks really nice. And it's just in the bottom that I feel like it just doesn't look, I don't know, maybe I'm being really picky. I mean, I am being really picky, but especially this pocket, I just can't get it to like sit right. And I don't know, I've re-knit the lining, I've re-sewed the lining. So I've worked on it quite a bit to the point that I'm kind of done with it. But it just doesn't, I feel like it just doesn't like look right. I don't know. You should let me know what you think though, because it's not terrible by any means. And I think if I like tucked it in, it might look better. I don't know. I can't quite tell. But I mean, overall, I'm happy with this sweater. I think it does look good. And that might just be a personal insecurity that it like kind of draws attention to. And so I might be the only one noticing it. I don't know. But overall, I would recommend the pattern. It was really well written. And if you have that same issue with the pockets, I would recommend knitting the sweater and just not knitting the pockets. Since it is a top-down sweater, it would take a lot of time. I would have to rip out so much knitting to take the pockets out that I don't think that's worth it. I don't think I dislike the pockets enough to do that. So I'm going to weave in the ends and see, you know, I'll wear it out a few times and see what I think. I don't think blocking would fix the issue because I tried that. So anyway, it's not terrible. It's just not the most flattering sweater that I have ever knit. But I do have another sweater to show you. So I'm going to take this one off real quick. Okay, wardrobe change. Again, my hair is getting very staticky now. Okay, so truck. I knit the Nurtured pullover by Andrea Mowry, which is a cropped, textured raglan style pullover, and you can tell it's very cropped. And I really enjoyed knitting this sweater. So I used, let me pull up my project page. The yarn is Valley Yarns Amherst in the colorway Jungle, which was, it's 100% merino wool. So it's not going to wear perfectly. As we know, merino is a little bit more delicate. It also tends to pill quite a bit. So I knew that going in. It's also a worsted weight yarn. And I really enjoyed knitting with it. And I actually, as I was knitting with it, I was like, I'm definitely going to buy this yarn again because it was a good price. I think I spent around $40, $45 on this sweater. And I actually had 2 skeins left over, so I could have saved quite a bit of money on that. So it was super nice to work with. It's really soft. It pills so much though. I've worn it, I think, probably 7 or 8 times, and I just depilled it, which I shared on my Instagram, and it was just so much fiber that I was pulling off of it. And it's still, like, I can see a few places where I feel like it still needs to be depilled, even though I spent like 45 minutes depilling it. So I don't know, I think on that alone, I probably wouldn't knit with this yarn again, but it was economical. It is a nice yarn. It's just like with how often I'm wearing this, because I really love the sweater, it's like I wear it once and then I need to depill it again because it just looks really kind of raggedy and yeah. Not my favorite yarn, but I love the color. I did love knitting with it. And I think I knit this exactly to pattern. I didn't change anything, which was great. It was super easy. I knit it in a month. Literally, I started it and finished it within 1 month exactly. And there are 3 reasons why I was able to get this sweater knit so quickly. First, I knitted over a Christmas break where I had 2 weeks off. I basically had no responsibilities other than Christmas and like feeding myself and very basic things like that. So I essentially had 2 weeks of just like knitting. Second, it's a worsted weight yarn. And third, it is a very cropped sweater. So it really just flew off the needles. It was so much fun to knit. I totally would recommend the pattern. I don't think I'll knit it again, only because I don't like to reknit patterns. There are just so many sweaters that I want to knit, so many different techniques that I want to try, that I don't think I have the time to knit one pattern twice, but I definitely will be on the lookout for cropped sweaters. So here's the texture. It's really simple. I love the yarn. I think the yarn is beautiful. And this is Woolen Yarns in her Footsie base, and this is unfortunately a strange brew, which means it's one of a kind. I feel like I think that means she's not going to offer the colorway again. I think that's what that means, is basically she dyed it once and that's it. But just in case, if she ever does offer it again, the color is Black Forest. Yeah, I do have a little bit of yarn left over, and I think I'm going to knit another pair of mitts that are just a lot shorter. So I do really like these. The pattern had a couple of errors, which was annoying because I did pay for it. And the errors also made me have to reknit like half of the mitt because the shaping was off. So those 2 things, the errors in the pattern and then the texture not being on the thumb, which I obviously, like, you can tell before purchasing the pattern, so that one I should just let go. I guess I just didn't pay enough attention and I kind of assumed that the pattern was on the thumb, and I could have put the pattern on the thumb, but I think after having to reknit quite a bit of the pattern and then rewrite it because, again, there was an error and there was not an errata for it. I think after that, I was just a little bit frustrated with it and didn't want to have to change anything else. So I don't know that I would knit these again, but they are really pretty texture. So if you like the texture enough, I would say it's probably worth buying. Just know that there are a couple of errors in the pattern. So those are those. Let's get into whips now. And I will show you the Fort sweater. It's just not here with me. So I will have to film that at another time and show that to you. So let's see. I will start with this one. So this is the Nimue, I think is how you say it, sweater. It is kind of like a poncho sweater. It's kind of like a swancho. And this was in Pom Pom magazine. It is by Cirilia Rose, is the designer. And I'm really close to being done with it. In fact, I probably would have had this done, except that I had to reknit quite a bit of this sweater. So let me just try to get across the shape of the sweater for you. It's going to be a little bit difficult to show because the construction is a little unique. It's cool. I really like the construction. So let's see. It's got these really big sleeves and it's got a really deep V-neck. So here is the way that this looks. One second. I have had trouble showing this off since I started knitting it. There we go. So it's got this really deep V-neck, which looks great. And then it's got these really long, not long, but like really big sleeves. And nothing's blocked or seamed or anything yet. So that's partly why this is so difficult to show. But let's see here. Stand by. Okay, I think that's going to make it easier to show. So the sleeves are knit flat, and you pick up the stitches around the body, which is also knit flat, and you just knit in stockinette and decrease slowly and then decrease rapidly up at the very top. And this is the armhole here at the top. So it wears like that. Can you see that? What are we having trouble with here? Having some difficulties. Okay, I think that shows the shape of the sleeve a little bit better, and I dropped it. Well, hopefully you get the idea. There's a schematic, which might be available on the public pattern page, I'm not sure. But it's got this cool like cable detail in the front, which was really the main reason that I wanted to knit it. So it's just a really like unique cable sequence, and that's down the front. And then the other thing that really drew me to this pattern was the V-neck. I just think it's so pretty. So I'm knitting the other sleeve, and this is the sleeve that I had to completely reknit because I picked up the stitches, I finished knitting it, I picked up the stitches for the other sleeve, I finished knitting this one. All I had to do was the neckband and the seaming, and I realized that I had made a pretty big error in the first sleeve. And the reason why is partly due to the pattern. So I've had a couple issues with this pattern. There was an errata that I found afterwards, and that fixed one of the issues, but it didn't fix either of the two issues that I had. So the first one is not an error with the pattern, it's just a gripe that I have, and that is when you're picking up for the sleeve, so it's along this entire body, right? So it's quite a bit of stitches to pick up. And it tells you how many stitches that you need to pick up, but it doesn't tell you any sort of pickup rate. And the reason that that's frustrating is because I had to pick up the stitches so many times. And this is, you know, not an insignificant amount of stitches. It's over 200 stitches to pick up. And I hate picking up stitches. So to have to re-pick them up so many times was really annoying because I just couldn't figure out the pickup rate. I don't know how many rows this was. And I could have figured it out. I could have looked at the gauge and figured it out. And I probably should have, and that would have saved me a little bit of frustration. But it's just like, if I pay for a pattern, I want that to be done for me. I don't want to do any sort of design work, right? Like I want to have a pickup rate when it's this many stitches. I don't know, maybe that's something that mostly bothers me. But that was the issue with the first sleeve, was I picked up the stitches poorly, so that half of the stitches, over half of the stitches were on the back, and then less than half of the stitches were on the front. And that wouldn't have been terrible, like it wouldn't have looked terrible, but the reason why that didn't work is because there is a garter stitch ridge down the very top of the sleeve, which is cool. And there are also, that's where the increases are. So I couldn't just eliminate the garter stitch ridge. There would still be increases that need to go along the top of the sleeve. And so what happened was that garter stitch ridge was like too far in the front, because there were fewer stitches in the front. So this garter stitch ridge is supposed to go in the middle of the stitches, and I just kept following the pattern after that. And as I was knitting, it was hard to tell that it was so off center that I just felt like, you know, it'll be fine. It'll be a little bit more in the front instead of like exactly on top of the sleeve. It'll look fine. It didn't look fine. And it just looked really, really wonky because that's where the increases were, or sorry, decreases. I've been saying increases this whole time, but you know what I mean. Decreases. So anyway, it was not, it didn't work. So I had to take it out. It was very sad because this has been a lot of stockinette stitch. But I'm getting close. I just need to reknit this sleeve. I can do it. I haven't worked on it in a while because I kind of got a little frustrated with it, but I just need to reknit the sleeve and then knit the, pick up the stitches around the V-neck, which I don't believe that there are pickup rate for picking up those stitches either, but that will be so much simpler to figure out than like, you know, this long of a garment. So yeah, this is kind of the way that it's knit. You start at the back here. This is the back bottom. You start knitting it flat and you do some shaping, and then you bind off. Oops, I'm losing stitches here. 1 second. I don't want to lose all my hard work. You separate for the V-neck, and then you continue knitting the front flat as well. The other issue that I had was this chart, or this part of the sweater, was incorrect. First of all, there's not a chart, I don't think, which is okay. Wait, was there a chart? No, I think I'm mistaken. I think there was a chart. There had to have been a chart. I'm pretty sure that there was. Right? No, there wasn't. There was not a chart. Hold on, I'm gonna go get the magazine because we need to resolve this. Okay, here's the magazine. Beautiful magazine. This was definitely my favorite photo shoot of theirs. It's got some beautiful designs. I might knit some other ones from it, but let's see. Let's go to, oops, don't want to do that. Make for half an hour, okay. So, looking at the pattern. Oh, there is a chart. Wow, okay, there's a chart. glad we got that sorted out. So here's a little bit of a better view of how the sweater is constructed and how it's knit up. It's really cool. I love the construction. I think it's an awesome garment. And let me show you the photo of the model. It looks beautiful on her. Let's see, here it is. So that's the sweater. It looks, I think it's awesome. So hopefully mine turns out just as good. So the yarn I'm using is not very special, and I actually really don't like it. I'm using Drops Alpaca in the colorway Trosa. It's kind of like a purple, I think it's showing a crossberry blue on camera, but it's a little bit more warm toned on in person. And it's fine. I think it's closer to a fingering weight, even though it says it's a DK weight on the website, which is what the pattern called for. But seeing as I've had so many issues with this, I'm kind of glad I didn't splurge on really nice yarn, because I've had to reknit it so many times. And who knows, maybe the garment will like maybe I won't even like the way it looks on me. I don't know. I'm not sure about this sweater yet. It's beautiful on the model. We'll see if I actually end up liking the finished object, but I will finish it and I will talk about that. Oh, I was going to mention the cable part. That whole front part had 2 errors, and one error was in the errata and one was not. So I actually had to end up reknitting the entire front. I'm so done with reknitting stuff. Not really, because it's worth it, but part of me is really annoyed with errors and patterns. I just want everything to be perfect and I want it to work the first time. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. So I'm knitting another sweater. I know I cast on for another sweater, but I couldn't wait, especially when I got the yarn, and I ordered the yarn in time so that when I finished my Nimue, I would have another sweater quantity of yarn to start my next sweater. But because I had to reknit it so many times, I just got behind, and as soon as I got this yarn, I was like, I'm just gonna cast this on. So I am knitting the Cline by Julie Hoover. And let me show you a photo of this sweater. It's a dolman style sweater. It's just a very like classic sweater, and I just think it looks really beautiful. And it's got, let's see if I can show you the sleeves. Yeah, so, oops, let me get back up. Okay, those are the sleeves. They've kind of got a lot of extra fabric, which is just the style of the sweater. So I've started on the back, and that's all I have so far. The sweater is knit flat. Yeah, so all I have so far is just this flat piece of knitting, but it does have quite a bit of shaping, and I'm decreasing right now, so it's just going to get faster and faster. And I'm almost done with the back, so yeah, that's what it looks like. It's got 1x1 ribbing down at the bottom, and it calls for a tubular cast on, and it calls for a tubular or a cable cast on, an alternate cable cast on, and I opted for the alternate cable cast on because I just like the way it looks a little bit better, and I think it's also more sturdy. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this. It's really simple, but I think I'm just gonna really enjoy wearing the sweater a lot, so that's what's motivating me right now. And the yarn I'm using is amazing. I'm knitting this out of Peace Fleece, their DK weight, and it is 75% Navajo Rambouillet and domestic fine wool and 25% mohair. So it's a really gorgeous yarn. It's very like earthy. It's not super soft, The colorway is gorgeous. It is Sheplova Mushroom. And I mean, I really went out on a limb with this because I don't usually knit in a ton of colors. I mean, that's actually changed. Like my green Nurtured, my purple Nimue, my red Cline. Like I'm really branching out with the colors. My next sweater will probably be gray. Yeah, I do really like this yarn. It's a lot of fun to work with. It is my first woolen spun, so it's going to be a much lighter weight sweater. It's just not going to be as heavy as a lot of my other sweaters, which will be very nice because I'm used to working with woolen spun and my sweaters are usually very heavy, which just makes them very warm, and that's not always welcome. I don't always want a super warm sweater that I'm just going to feel very, it's just going to feel very heavy. So anyway, really like this yarn so far, but it is kind of scratchy. It's kind of a crunchy wool, so just keep that in mind if you do decide to knit a sweater out of it. I think that's really all that I wanted to say about this sweater. Julie Hoover, I've never knit one of her patterns before, but the pattern is written gorgeously. Yeah, I haven't had any issues with it. Everything is written very well. The layout's great. The photos are great. I don't think I have any issue with that. Yeah, I got gauge. I actually got like perfect gauge, perfect stitch gauge, almost perfect row gauge. Almost. It was so close, which is the closest that I've ever gotten. So I'm really making like no modifications except for one or two for the shaping because my row gauge was just a little bit off, but I'm really happy with the way that this is turning out. And then my last project that I'm knitting is a pair of socks, and I don't think I've shown these before. Yeah, I think I started these like right before Christmas, and I haven't filmed in so long. So this is just a simple pair of vanilla socks, and I am knitting these out of the Arnie & Carlos Regia Pairfect in the colorway Garden, and a lot of people call this their Christmas colorway because it is very Christmassy. And I started these before Christmas, but with all of the Christmas gifts that I was knitting, which I wasn't able to show on the podcast because I finished and gifted them, and I just didn't do a good job of documenting them, but that's okay. Those are done with. They're out of my mind. But because I was knitting Christmas gifts, I really focused on those instead of these socks for myself. So they did not get done in time for Christmas, but I can still knit them, and they are very Christmassy. Yeah, I was gonna say I could probably still wear them outside of Christmas, but I don't know. They're very Christmassy. So we'll see if I'll wear them. But this is the first time I've worked with the Pairfect yarn. It's really cool. I'm liking it so far. I just did a 1x1 rib cuff. This is a 60 stitch sock on size 0 needles. I knit the majority of this sock on double points and had to order some 0 magic loops because I just couldn't do the double points anymore. I'm so much more of a magic loop kind of person. I did an OMG heel for the first time, and this is a paid for pattern, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. But if you like slip stitch heels but they don't fit you very well, and you need a gusset, I would definitely recommend this pattern. It was really easy to do. Well, I shouldn't say I recommend the pattern, but I don't know how they fit me yet, so we'll see once I finish these how well the heel fits me. But that's very personal. I know a lot of people, this heel fits them really well. So, and it was a really well written pattern. And I'm just on the toe now, so I'm doing the toe decreases. So yeah, those are all of my projects. So that's all I have to show you. I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next time.